Welcome back to another episode of the Transformation Leaders Podcast. I am Sean Ennis. I am joined here today with a good friend of mine from the beautiful place of Google. Yuri, welcome to join the channel today. Can you introduce yourself for the audience?
Yes, of course. And thanks so much for having me, Sean. It's a pleasure. So I tell folks I have three main jobs. The first one is the 24/7 startup called being a parent, and a lot of us are. I'll let you know about the ROI in a few years, learning a lot there. Second is I've been at Google for 15 years. I've done a lot of different things, enjoyed it. I tell people I've been trying to escape Google, but there's just a lot of cool things to do here. Now we're Alphabet, of course. So I've done everything from ads, sales, support. I've gone to cloud, became a software engineer, then a PM, and really learned that I just love building products. And this is not right the best time to be alive to build products. So right now I work on the partnership side. We build internal tools for our partnership folks who are working with the execs at Google. So it's really, really fascinating, fast world, and I'm sure we'll get into that as well. And last but not least, the third, it's not even a job. I just love meeting amazing, awesome, smart individuals and folks all around the world like yourself, Sean. So I do a lot of outreach, talk to a lot of startups, pre-IPO companies, and enterprises, helping them with questions like, hey, how do I reach an audience of 1 million people, growth hacking, or how do I get my first 5 enterprises? Or nowadays, hey, Sean, Yuri, how do I go into this agentic world, right? I love having those conversations or just connect with people. I mean, you're great at that as well. Just like, hey, you two folks, you should meet together. There should be a great partnership. So yeah, really, really happy what I'm doing and still learning. That's the cool thing about life. Keep learning as much as I can.
Absolutely. That's why I'm here, and really appreciate Yuri for coming on today, because we're talking about a subject that you know intimately. And I know intimately because I've worked for Fortune 500 companies. I've worked for startups. I've worked for middle of the road companies. And the question of build, buy, and partner is always a combination that people need to be discussing. A lot of times, unfortunately, people buy the tool and find the problem, but the best teams out there, they look at their problems, they see what's out there, and they do this kind of math. And AI has really changed that math. So let's jump in today. That's kind of the point. AI has really done a lot of different disruption. One big part of that disruption is when it comes down to writing code. But unfortunately, people have this really weird belief that code is software, and that software or technology is what solves a business problem. And this is where a lot of people get into problems. I see a well-touted comment that people have with AI is that the majority of AI projects are failing. And this is one of the real big areas that I see people are failing because they're assuming that AI will solve a problem on its own. Yuri, what is your feelings around this?
Yeah, definitely near and dear. I mean, my first reaction, and you kind of hit on the nail, is I really believe that two things always happen. And this is even before AI, Sean, and I'm wondering if you had the same experiences, especially non-technical business people who obviously I love working with. That's the reason we're in business here. Come to us and say, hey, I heard another team using software to solve this problem. Can you do it tomorrow, in a month, right? There's always like, well, someone else wrote it or someone did it, right? Let's just do it. I think AI has 10x that. Like, oh, I heard vibe coding. Sean, can't you just vibe code this tomorrow? And so my true feeling with that is that most people are just hearing kind of the news cycle, and maybe they tried something outside of a corporate or a company, like on the side project, and they think you can copy paste it. So I agree with you. Writing code does not mean actually shipping a workable product. At the same time, right, I like to do devil's advocate. One really cool thing that it has enabled that wasn't there before, that we do a lot at Google, is creating quick POCs, right? Before it's very expensive, right? You, to your point, like, hey, I go on one team, they're like, okay, let's buy Salesforce. We know Salesforce. And that, that was it, right? I work in corporate. That was the easiest thing to do. No knock on Salesforce, great product. But then we're like, wait a minute, but we have like 100 people. Should we even do that? Right? Back in the day, creating your own CRM, I mean, you need to have a huge engineering team, like, and especially at a place like Alphabet. Nowadays, we could say, hey, why don't we give ourselves 7 days? If it's just 100 people, it's all internal. We're not touching external clients at this point, and test the waters out with big asterisks to your point that, hey, someone's going to need to own this after. This isn't just, hey, make me this 5 columns and these cool features and I'm done, right? You know this better than I do, even that you, there's always going to be bugs. I don't know any product. Think of Google search, think of Amazon, everyone, all the things, Netflix, everything that's huge, Uber, everything is always going to have a bug until maybe AGI, but that's another conversation. But because of that, right, you have to think about like where to be basically. And I think going back to this slide is I do think that people need to be reminded of why you're even writing code, and then we'll get into that because that's going to really help you understand like kind of which door to walk through.
Yep.
What do you think, John?
Absolutely. And again, I joke that it's the mortgage payment that kills you. When you go in, the down payment is tough, but it is the month after month, year after year mortgage payment that's really rough. So that's where I kind of come up with this 4 areas that you need to think about. So when you're deciding this build, buy, or partner, you need to understand the math of what it's going to take to actually maintain this. AI can really reduce how many people, but you still need people, right? And you need a diversity of people because you have a diversity of accountability. There's going to be somebody that needs to teach people how to use the new system. You're going to need people who are going to be the authority from an executive perspective. You're going to need support desk people who are going to support these things. You're going to need SREs who are going to make sure from an engineering perspective that when things are broken, they are re-implemented and they're fixed. It may be a flywheel, but somebody needs to start that flywheel.
Yes.
You need to understand the landscape here when it comes down to what is the differentiation and scale. So are you just copying what you already have? Are you adapting a piece of software to a process? Is that a good process? Make sure that you understand what is the point to do this whole thing. What are the metrics that you're trying to change, right? You're either reducing risk, you're aligning to an opportunity, you are, trying to get revenue, making sure that you know what measurable gains you're trying to achieve. And then lastly, I love this, and again, my best customers understand this. And that is, what kind of leverage does this endeavor have? So you could go through right up to the point of implementation, build something, and then have the numbers right. And you could go back to your software vendor and says, hey, look, we could stay with your system if you change the costs like this. So we live in a real life world, and people are looking to save money. Being able to go through this process just for the leverage makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I remind us, so far right now, right, we're building for humans, for other humans. Yes, I know agents talk to agents, but at the end of the day, unless you're building it for yourself and you are still human, this is a big part. Like, who is going to be using your system for what reason, right? All of these, I 100% align with. We used to ask, I mean, my favorite question during an interview, right? Like build versus buy. What would you say? And a lot of candidates would come to me and say, "Sean, okay, without even asking more questions, obviously to probe, but they're like, okay, like if it's this way, right? I have this framework, it's always going to go this way. If it's this thing, it's going this way." And kind of, and AI just made this even better. I always tell people, like, let's take a step back. First, like, who's this for? The speed, you ask those basic questions, but you also want to understand again is who's going to be using it, right, Sean? Like when I was in cloud, again, a lot of folks are in enterprise. They're used to the Salesforce. They're coming in from other teams. They're on Salesforce. So yes, we could have our own internal version, but you want to meet people in the middle too. Like you don't want to just be like, okay, I'm going to build this because I'm Alphabet or whomever. You want to see, is this the right solution for them, right? Before we even like talk about through all of this. Well, if you go to a smaller team, right? I'm on a team now. One of the folks we support, it's about 130 users, and day zero, somebody could have raised their hand and said Salesforce or Attio, like lots of great solutions. I'm not knocking them down. And then you talk to some of the folks, you're like, actually, I just need like 5 columns and 3 levers. That's all I need because everything else is pretty much done for me. So I think that's the next thing also as we're kind of going through that.
No, absolutely. I tell people that it's worth a conversation, right? Before you start going and saying, let me get an engineer going to do stuff, do the analysis. And it starts with, as we talked about before, the down payment versus the mortgage. For 20 years, people say building is just too hard. We're just going to buy. That makes sense. Now things are different because it is so easy. The down payment just became much, much smaller. But the mortgage is still the same on a lot of these things. So what's happening is people are getting into trouble. And we'll get to that soon. But, there's a lot of issues with builders overestimating their safety of how easy this is going to be, because a lot of builders out there, I say, look, yes, the Claude Codes of the world, the Geminis of the world, they have lowered the bar for what it takes to do coding. My 9-year-old and 11-year-old code games right now using Gemini. Okay, the bar is lower. Mm-hmm. But I can tell you this, yesterday I spent 30 minutes teaching one of my children on how to create files and file structures and opening up multiple windows and how to copy paste, because the AI building was easier than the copy paste. So I make mention of this because people get overconfident because AI does do a lot of the heavy lifting. And part of the message that I'm trying to say here is that overestimating the safety of AI, in that, hey, I can build anything. Building is just part of it. And, depending upon what you're building is also part of it. So a lot of people out there, they're like, Sean, what we're going to use AI to just take a popular CRM in the market, let's say, that we use, and I'm just going to tell it, hey, here's our configurations, take an open source tool and adapt it, right? People are doing that. As I said, you can use the leverage side of things to lower your costs so that you don't have to make a move. And I'm seeing that being the more popular strategy. But what I'm also seeing, which is really, really unsuccessful, is that they look at a business process and they just try to encode the business process agentically. And then they never stop to think, is this business process a good business process? Mm-hmm. Is it a successful one? And will it help to scale it? A lot of times people take a broken process, scale it, and then all of a sudden they have downstream problems because they've sped the plow. I mean, have you seen people run into these two different approaches?
Yeah, and let me begin again my reaction to this, going back to that human side. And I've seen this before AI, and now it's even crazier. And it's not just Google; it's any company that I've spoken to enough people in the Fortune 500 and 1,000. What ended up happening before, Sean, is especially non-technical organizations, someone come in that's a bit more technical, they know SQL or HTML and JavaScript, and they would create a tool. That's what I did when I was in ads, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, like we have an engineer on our team," right? And again, they get all the spotlight, they're going forward, they get promoted, and then they're like, "Peace out, I'm out of here, Sean." So now I'm seeing this even crazier, right? I can vibe put an amazing thing, go to a big company, right? If I'm in a big company, that helps me make a name for myself, especially non-engineering organization. And I'm not saying everyone is like this, but I'm saying there's definitely, as we've seen, people are moving jobs and positions faster. If I'm the CEO of these companies, enterprises, especially, or SMBs with 100 plus, 50 plus users, employees, I also should be thinking in the back of my mind as I'm thinking of build, like you said, who's building it? Are they going to stick around, right? Because if we're relying on Sean to build it and we're giving him all these things and that's not his main job or it becomes his main job, but then he could leave and it screws all the rest of us. I've seen this also happen. You put all the eggs in one basket if there's no team behind it. So that's one thing that I'm always kind of thinking about. Should we build it versus not, right? Are they going to just get the promo and leave? Is this going to be sustained? The other part that a lot of people forget that I was just going to add that you kind of also touched about this is the security in the company, right? Like if you and I are building for ourselves, like we get to make the choices, right? I'm okay with ChatGPT, Gemini knowing my personal info. If you and I are in a big company, an enterprise, they're going to take it very seriously. They're going to limit you. There's a lot more scrutiny. So even if you vibe code, it's not as easy as like hand over the keys to the AI overlords. So that plus, and I just want to push on this. Do we need this? That's my favorite. I always tell my team, tell me 5 ways why we should just kill this project or not even do this. Like I've had enough conversation with VPs like, oh, we need this, Sean, this amazing thing. And I keep pushing. I'm like, I don't think this is needed. And then we build it. And guess what, Sean? No one's using it. And they go, oh, actually, I didn't need it. And sure, in the age of AI, it's a little easier. But my point is, that's another question that people need to say. Do we need this? Do we need to build it? Those are the two things. Like you talked about CRMs, obviously. But let's take a favorite app, Granola. I don't know if you use it, Sean, right? Takes notes and all, has amazing things. I know a lot of people messaging me, oh, I can make my own one. And then my question gets, do we need it? Like at Google, for example, I have Gemini with meetings.
Yep.
I have all of that pretty much. And I don't have the 50 other features that it has. It's amazing. But do I even need it? And so if I'm talking to folks in Granola and they're trying to pitch me all these things, but I already have those 2-3 basic things already, again, I already have that. Or if a VP is coming to me and saying, Yuri, build this, like a clone of Granola, again, why? We already have those solutions. So that's the other last part I like to kind of explain. If you can justify, I really need this, I need these features, right? It doesn't make sense to buy. Those are going to be the variables to start thinking about actually building it ourselves.
Oh, absolutely. And you're a great straight man, right? Because number one is differentiation. Okay, is this going to differentiate ourselves in the market? Is what we build actually needed? Will it matter? Right? Is this niche? Do we want to make it because if we do this, we are going to separate ourselves from the marketplace? Or do we need this to catch up to the marketplace? If it isn't something that's going to move the needle, why do it? Right? If it's not going to move the needle, why do it? Right?
Yes.
the next question is around depth, right? What kind of expertise does it need, right, to be able to do these things, right? How much access will it need? Is that going to become a security problem? Like, this comes into the blast radius, right? Again, I don't know about you, Yuri, at Alphabet, but I've been in lots of Fortune 500 companies. There are certain things that are like the third rail. You touch it, you die. Some companies, it is their CRM. Some companies, it is their financial records. They're in healthcare. This is going to be patient records. There's some things that the blast radius is such that maybe you outsource that risk, right? Number 4 is the area that almost everybody I talk to fails. Do you understand the process well enough to specify it precisely? And I don't know about your experience, Yuri, but my experience is AI does things really well. But workflow and understanding how humans should touch things, can touch this, and replicating a human process, it does not do well. It copies really well. And, lastly is, at some point, there will be ownership. You made point to this. At some point, someone's going to have to be in charge of maintaining it. There's going to be someone in charge of its security. And there needs to be a product owner internally whose job is to make sure everybody's going to be doing their job. Now, can that be split across multiple things? Yes. But, these diagnostics is what I recommend customers to follow to understand how to make the decision they need to make.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm digesting this because it's literally a copy of what every day I feel like I have to have these types of conversation. The one extra thing, I was just going to give you an example. It was 14, 13 years ago. Feels like yesterday for me. I was on a team. We were doing support for Google for the ad side. And we want to have our support, Googlers to be better, right? Everyone is always striving. Google is very known. All my colleagues, I always say they're way smarter. My whole team, way smarter than I am. And so we wanted to, we hired a bunch of folks and just used each other as kind of like soundboards. Like, hey, Sean, can you give me feedback on how I'm doing? When I'm having a phone call with a client from AdWords, am I doing well? What can I improve? And this is when, models, data science was just starting to pick up. And, a buddy of mine, he was an engineer. I was just self-teaching myself. He was like, hey, we should create something, that we can automate this. We'll create a model, right, that could look at people's performance and give them, feedback on that. And so if you think about this, the differentiation, like this is something that was very core. We had a whole team that's doing just that. We have the data, we have the expertise, we have the people, all the rules. The blast radius is you're talking about here. Legal was going to approve it, right? This is things we're already doing. We had a very clear process already, right? It's been established for multiple years, and we would maintain it. We would, create a team. But then one thing I was asking, myself, like, how fast can we do it? And then we did the math with my buddy, and even if we hired all these people first, hiring takes time and deploying and all that, it was going to take like 6 to 12 months minimum, and we don't even know what we'll get, right? And so what we ended up doing, I was really happy, the whole buy versus partner. We found a company that was known at the time for doing text to speech. This was, again, it was not the biggest thing yet. And we partnered, we did a POC and proved the point that this is possible for Google to do, and spend about a year with them until, again, Google created their own and things like that. But my point on that is I also see a lot of people like, okay, I'm going to, I check all these points, and then they're like, okay, but this will take me a long time to do. Or the opposite. Hey, I'm ready to go with X company, but oh my gosh, Sean, I have to go through legal paperwork,
Hmm.
creating POs. That's going to be another 12 months. And by that time in today's world, that's like 10 years with AI, right? So I think that's the other part that people forget about. How fast do you need it to be deployed?
I mean, people forget these things all the time. And again, great point. Again, you're leading right. You're leading the witness. The old world calculus and the new world calculus. So the cost to build, as it was in the past, spinning up a team of 10 engineers, getting an agile project set up, hiring, executing, you're talking months. Now, people think of it as, pixie dust, but you could go through and sprinkle some pixie dust, and maybe the cost of your build is pretty low, especially if, a lot of the project's small. Now, that speeds us up, but maybe you could get it into people's hands, but you got to ask yourself, okay, the time it takes for users to adopt the tool, that doesn't change, right? The supporting of those users to adopt a new tool doesn't change, right? Being able to set up a process of capturing feedback from the customer, collecting the bugs, collecting the feature, rolling out the new versions, that isn't zero. So, the maintenance and security, this is always going to be a problem. It's even a bigger problem now because AI doesn't necessarily code things in the most secure ways. So unless you provide it your security blueprint, it may use what it considers as best practice. So, the default used to be, just to your point, Yuri, which is, hey, great, we found a tool, we don't have to buy, yay, right? But now I think the math is such that if it's high stakes, if it's truly going to move the needle, if it's truly worth the value, and the cost or the availability isn't there, you can now have that freedom. So the days of vendor lock-in, and being really scared that your provider is going to double your rates, those days may be over, which is great in its own right.
Yeah, no, I was going to bring up when I was preparing for this podcast, I asked Gemini, what's the most successful things that you see in podcasts? And I think you even brought up, we should have disagreements. So I'm like, how can I disagree with Sean? But we keep coming to the same picture. But let me give you a different spin also on some of these. Because we're talking about, how it's like, oh, just go vibe coded. One thing that I've also seen is, and this is a great thing to kind of think about is, some of my PMs can come in and create a POC, like you said, in the afternoon, and it looks awesome. It's built on app script, it's showing you the magical thing. And then again, you start taking it apart. You're like, wait a minute, you're like using a million tokens every every time it hits the LLM, it hits Gemini. And so like it cannot scale. It looks nice, on paper when it's like, in smaller scale. So as you're thinking as individuals, right, as folks that own these companies are thinking about these, again, you want to think about also the scale that you need. And you want to think about what is true in the token usage. Because I'm sure you've heard these horror stories. I've seen a lot of even enterprises, going to say small and medium, but actually more recently enterprises, they say, Yuri, I'm spending like, per person, like 5K a day. I don't know what my ROI is, right? In this AI world, like show me the ROI. And so my point with that is I still believe there is ROI and we'll figure this out. But you also want to think about, as you're using AI in the AI world to kind of improve on all these columns, rows, excuse me, what is going to be the cost for you as a business to do that? To the point you're saying is, if again, as you're thinking about this, oh, creating a CRM is complicated. We could do this, Claude, Gemini, whatever, but holy moly, that'll be a lot of token usage. You could always kind of take a look at like that versus a monthly subscription. Again, I've seen a lot of people even start there, or the opposite. Like, hey, again, I just needed two things from this solution. That's not a lot of tokens. And the last thing I was going to say, that I keep bringing up because my engineering counterparts always remind me, Sean, is again, I'm a product guy. I know a little bit of engineering enough to become a SWE for a little bit here, but I highly encourage, I have a lot of conversations with a lot of solo entrepreneurs, and I love that I could say this out loud, that a lot of them are business folks, non-engineers. I'm so excited for them because before, right, you have to be a SWE and engineer. It felt like, right, you have to be in this world, you're secluded. And I'm not saying there's not a lot of great founders and leaders who are not SWE or engineering background. That's going to continue. But I like to see also the business. But I always encourage the business folks, in my personal experience, and this may be controversial, I feel like you need someone with an engineering background. This is why I always have arguments with people. They're like, SWEs are going to be gone. I'm like, no, look at how many new SWE positions are coming up. It's because everyone wants more SWEs because the people who are not technical with great ideas are building all these cool things and they need a SWE. I always tell my business, especially business leaders, hey, before we make a choice, as we're going through this, let's see the SWE position. They're engineering. They'll just see something different than most people would see. And it's really easy to go to Lovable and be like, create this, Uber copy. You're like, cool, I have my own Uber. And then a SWE is like, wait a minute, think of like how we're going to handle the load and like how much is going to be in cost. Like people don't think about that because something that builds something quickly is just going to, you won't see that as a non-engineer. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And again, so, to your point, I have a really good use case that has been out here since last year. Is, AWS came out and talked about, hey, we created so many different solutions so quickly. And the problem is they were engineering, creating these things and delivering them to operations. And then operations had 10, 15, 20 different tools that they had to manage, right? And this is, not just the security hardening I think we talked about, not just the integrations, but, you're talking about how do we get alignment with operations so that operations creates a standard for these tools and they all plug into an Uber tool, right? All the different edge cases that you're going to run into. You can create and clone a product really quickly, as you were talking about with the CRM. But that's the easy part now. It is the 90% of adapting it to your personal need. It is going to be the challenge. And a lot of those tools that are on the marketplace, they are mature enough to have a lot of that automatically.
Yeah, I mean, if I can add the risk, I keep forgetting. I appreciate you bringing us back here. What is your risk level, right? Is this touching all internal client data? Is this what, your external clients are going to interact with? That's obviously a very important part that we're seeing here in Alphabet as well. We're not just throw AI for the sake of throwing AI at things. That's where you get AI slop and all these bad things. But I also want to, again, because I feel like I want to make sure I'm a balanced person here. I love what you wrote here is cloning something in the weekend. Like, what can you do in a weekend? I feel it's a great litmus test also, because one thing we didn't talk about, just like, what is it? I forgot the statistic, but how many startups fail, right? It's not like 99% of them succeed, bunch fail. And to me, the way I read it is, look, not everyone needs all of these, and at least, or maybe it's the wrong time and so on. Same thing when you're developing internal tools. I've seen this. We would build 5 tools and over the years, one will survive. Yep. Right. But it takes years to get that, Sean. Now with the litmus test, let me do 5 CRM clones for me on the weekend and have them compete and then see what wins. Or maybe we need to buy, right? Like that's the other cool really thing that we could do now, testing in the weekend. And again, understanding, like I said earlier, it's not perfect, right? If something works, when you do prototyping, it's not like, okay, that's the production version. That's another thing that people forget. that's going to be different, right? There's lots to say there. But at the same time, I I tell all my PMs, have, a first version for your Eng counterpart to like click through,
Yep.
like have them experience it, work with our UX designers to come up with something that you're not just like, here's a business requirements or product requirements and doc, Sean, go code it. Like that's how we've been doing it usually. Like here's some mocks, right, that you kind of see, and here's a lots of English, and we're throwing in engineers, right, or each other. Now you could do like, here's 3 interactive experiences, not just like pictures. Like you can click around. Oh, okay. Oh, that's how it works. Oh, that's how you want it to interact. And I think, yeah, I highly encourage people to go through this, because to me, again, at the end of the day, and I should have started this, AI, sorry, tooling, internal tooling specifically. If we're just looking at internal tools for Sean's company, for Alphabet, where Yuri works, internal tooling is less risky than to all your, if it doesn't, right, if the end user is not an external client, if you control how the data is there, right, you could do things just for yourself. And I think that's the exciting part that I've seen in my organization is we get to try cool things. I push my team. They probably, if they see this, they'll get annoyed that I keep talking about, like, what's the cool new thing that you tried this week that you haven't, like, what's a cool thing that you saw in the market? Even if we can't buy it, can you build it to see what it looks like as a POC? Then we can discuss build versus buy. I see so much of that more, Sean, happening in an enterprise company. And again, I talk to the leaders, and they're also expecting that from us. Like, hey, how are you improving using internal tools? Have you found that kind of in your dealings as well?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what I'm seeing is that the cost to put together, a test car, if you will, and say, hey, go drive this around, crash into a wall, have fun, right? And here's the link. Here's the link, right? Here's the link. And going through and getting competitive ideas going, and have 3 or 4 things, and then you have every capability of capturing, tell me the 10 things you like about it, tell me the 10 things you hate about it. And then you could take all of that user feedback, take those 3 or 4 tools, give it to AI and say, hey, build this, the Uber version, and then get feedback on that. The cost of iteration on AI is ridiculously short, but to make massive changes after you're in production, as we talked about, is massively painful. Yeah. So, a lot of people are like, hey, let's code it and push it to production in a weekend. You could, but maybe you should, right? So, what I like to tell people is the move for me, and what I tell my customers is understand the market context of what you're trying to do. Put yourself in the shoes of your vendors, right? Make sure you understand the vendors of the marketplace and where they're going. Have a team put together something, like you said, Yuri, over the weekend, right? Have a good model, understand, as we talked about before, the cost of this, and then have a realistic conversation with these vendors and say, look, man, thanks for your demo of your product. Let me demo what we did in a weekend, right? And then say, look, we know what the cost is to run this. What's the cost for you to run it for us? And you're immediately putting the leverage on your side. And that is an incredibly useful tactic right now.
Yeah. I was just going to quickly, I'm sorry to interrupt. It's so like, I'm seeing this, you use the word leverage is the correct way, is now when you work with other vendors, you don't just describe, you could show. I think that's one thing. And then, and this is probably a longer discussion, but this is where I think the world is moving to. I mean, I talk to different folks, like, what are these, SaaS companies going to be charging? Is it going to be for the tokens? that some people are thinking that's what you'll use. How are we moving to that? Because I do see a world where at least some solutions as it is today, like you just said, if if there if there if there's something you could do quickly, and people will just start doing them themselves, and they don't need like these huge, there's going to be losses there's always going to be the big enterprise that just want to, I'm not even going to try this. That's always going to be there. But I do wonder what you think about this, because I imagine some vendors are watching this like, oh, I'm scared, like, right? And I want all of them to succeed, right? We're in the greatest nation in the world. I want everyone to succeed. This is why people love America. And I'll give my 2 cents maybe after you, but I'm wondering, kind of passing question back to you, like, how should vendors be thinking? Because you're right, the leverage now is going to be on these companies who are like, hey, Sean, I was going to buy your SaaS, but I could build myself. Like, why should I? So I'm boomeranging this question to you. How do you think vendors should be thinking about this?
And as a vendor who has tools and has something else, and people can use it themselves, what I show them is, this is the feature functionality. I know how much it takes to build that. If you were to copy it, I know, because we did it, right? So I know the math that they're in, and if they can do it cheaper, good luck. I'm a firm believer of, if there isn't a market for my product, then the company shouldn't exist. But I can tell you, what I do, and again, on the channel, and the audience know, I have a product called Kinetic Tricks. What it solves is a business problem. The product isn't there because it's cool. I think it is, but it's not. That's not why people buy it. People buy it because they can make money off of it. They can save money off of it. They can be more productive. And they maybe just don't have the time or patience or expertise to build that. I talk about this all the time, the process side. A lot of people have bad processes, and the only reason that they buy tools is because they can just adopt an external one and blame it on the technology.
That's funny. Yeah, I'm laughing because, yeah, I hear the stories. I'll share one story. A buddy of mine, they do this solution for collaboration, like comments and all that. And as he's speaking, he was saying, yeah, now with AI, everyone's like, oh, I could just build a commenting solution for that. And I was encouraging him, like, yeah, tell him vibe code it. Go ahead, try it on your enterprise solution that you're selling other people. And a lot of people come back to him like, okay, never mind. Like, it's like the iceberg. Oh yeah, the tip, so easy to do. I can just mention Sean, and now we have a commenting feature. But then again, load balancing and all the AI features, that's so hard to do. And who's taking care of it? So I agree with you. At the end of the day, that's the thing that when I talk to folks who are selling SaaS solutions, who are vendors, I think we all shouldn't be afraid to say, yeah, go for, like, first, obviously, try your sales, explain why you do the things you do, but encourage people, like, hey, it's kind of like all of us, like, I don't know any person personally that, when they go to Google Hotels, unless you have some membership, that they're like always choosing one hotel. They like to look at all the options. Okay, how much does this cost? What do I get here? Right? They love checking it out. To me, it's like the same thing here. But like, if you want to check out yourself, what you could do, I say, like, let them. You should stand by your product, because if your product kicks butt, then they'll be back and be like, oh my God, Sean, like, okay, I've done the test. I'm ready to work with you. That's actually a validation for you. If they don't come back, I tell people, try to find out actually what they did that was good, that maybe you're lacking. And that's how you can also improve your product.
I mean, I can tell you this. I had a wonderful call with a gentleman who ran an AI company, right? And, he asked me, like, hey, we're having problems here, we're having problems there. And I'm like, well, have you tried using AI here? Have you tried using AI there? And like, no, we don't use AI to build our product. It's a product that uses AI for another customer. And I'm like, you really need to start thinking about eating your own dog food.
Yes.
Because this is another thing that I tell vendors. It's like, look, everybody is going to be doing this. And for for just having the expertise in-house to answer the questions when customers ask. Because again, if you're stuck in a situation as this guy is in, of when people say, hey, why are you asking me to use AI when you say you won't use it?
Yes.
Right? And this is the kind of situation that people are going to be in. You may not be the biggest fan of what AI does or the outputs that you get for it, but everybody else is going to be trying it and using it. So you have to have some competency in it. And you'll be surprised in what it can do. But, I want to finish this up today, Yuri, to talk about just, this build, buy, and partner. We talked about when, and that is the differentiation. You want to make sure it's well understood that you have the funding at the call, and that is not just money, but time, as you said. The blast radius, you talked about scale, right? Making sure that, can you actually scale this? You got to watch out for the maintenance tail, the security. And I talk about this all the time. Why deal with the distraction? If I had this conversation with a potential customer, they're like, Sean, I can use AI to do what this product does. I'm like, great. How much of a distraction is that going to be? I touched base with them. I told them freely, this is how the product does it. So they decided to do it on their own. 3 months later, they didn't do any sales, but they tried to build a product that does sales. And I'm like, look, man, look at all the money you lost in the last 3 months. Now, to me, if it is a commodity offering, that's where you buy, right? If it's not going to move move the needle, if only a handful of people are going to use it, right? If it has all kinds of compliance and certification things that cause risk, but look out for vendor lock-in. If you're signing a contract in blood that says firstborn at the bottom, maybe that is not the best buy opportunity. And then partnering is perfect when you don't know your process. You're going to adopt the process for you. All you're doing is bringing your people to the show. There's value in that. But having that dependency, if that company were to go belly up, then you're going to run into problems.
Yeah, I'm with you. Let me give to the viewers one more tip that I think people also underappreciate. Like usually when you think of Gemini, Claude, ChatGPT, all the local models, you're like coding or solving things. I've been using it since last year, really, for brainstorming, kind of what we talked about. You could literally have, and I'm not saying, by the way, I discourage just talk to an AI and not humans, but as let's say you're my boss, Sean, and you said, Yuri, build versus buy. We get all the details, like you said, we follow this great framework. I would take that. Let's say I go to Gemini and be like, hey, Gemini, I want to brainstorm with you. And I always say, by the way, don't just agree with me, because I don't know if you've seen a lot of LLMs just agree with you. Sure. Like, let's have a debate and literally say, hey, what's the pros and cons? Exactly what we talked about. Have those conversations. Don't let it be the thing that decides. I still believe in human creativity, but I found it these models, because they're learning, and it's kind of like someone was in Waymo. I was talking to someone in Waymo, and anyone who's building autonomous cars, they were saying, Yuri, like if Yuri has a crash, Yuri learns what not to do next time, but that's it. There's no data like shared. If a driverless car crashes and you fix that bug, now every car that's using that technology is fixed. So think of, we're all interacting, these LLM models are getting smarter, so pros and cons get better. So as you're interacting, it's going to start asking you great questions. It was asking me like, hey, have you thought of these kind of variables? I'm like, Oh yeah, I didn't even think of seasonality. I didn't even think of this. Oh, this is a brand new language. Like no one knows. Like it was saying, hey, you'll have to build this in Google language that these amount of people, how many people are in the industry that could build this language? These are the kind of things again that these frameworks kind of touch upon. But when you're having a debate with an LLM, it'll kind of bring it up, and then you still as a human should make the decision once you say, okay, you know what, I'm okay with these drawbacks. The pros are much better for me.
Oh, absolutely. So again, Yuri, can you tell our wonderful audience where we can find you?
That's a great question. I mean, on LinkedIn, if you search for my first and last name, Yuri Kleban, I need to get into the Twitter sphere. That's what everyone's been telling me. I'm mostly on LinkedIn, trying to make it work. But yeah, feel free. I tell folks if I can be of any help, Google's always hiring, and let me know. Don't be shy. And the last thing I was going to leave the viewers is this is again, I keep reminding, we are in the most fascinating. There's going to be like my kids, I have very young kids, they're going to read about like these moments, just like they're reading about 9/11 and COVID and the revolution. Like there's all these moments in life. This thing that we're living through is insane. And I just want to encourage everyone that's listening, if you haven't yet, try these technologies, try building. If you are building, again, keep learning. This is such a cool time to be at. Like I can't remember a time where every day I literally used to have this note, Sean, that said, learn something new every day. And sometimes I'll learn, sometimes I'm not. This time I have an agent remind me, and then it gives me even suggestions. Hey, you talk to Sean, learn more about what his company does. Oh, it's this thing. Let me tell you articles about it. And I feel like I know some people, there are studies like it's making us dumb, but I feel like if you are constantly interacting, it's kind of like when Google started, you could search anything in the world. Now you could learn anything in the world. Yesterday, my kids were like, how are allergies? Like, why do we get allergies? And there's like a million YouTube videos, but they wanted to interact. And I literally said, hey, you're going to talk to a 5-year-old. And this, the Gemini voice just had a conversation with my 5-year-old twins about allergies. And so I encourage, I'm so excited. I hope all your viewers are excited. This is such a cool time to live.
Oh, I agree. I call it the Cambrian explosion of technology.
Yes.
It's just the amount of different products that we've seen in the last 2 years is going to pale in comparison. Right now, certainly tech and CX are being disrupted a lot, but this is going to bleed into every industry and affect them. So again, appreciate everybody being in the audience today. Feel free to reach out, transformationleaderspodcast.com. You can hit me up on LinkedIn as well. That's how Yuri found me. That's how I found Yuri. So, really appreciate it, Yuri, coming in today. And we'll talk at you next week. Thanks.
Thank you.